So last lesson we learned how to pronounce each Korean letter and that they are arranged into character blocks which each represent one syllable. But we didn't spend much time learning how the letters are arranged in the blocks. You likely found it fairly easy and intuitive as the letters are read from left to right and top to bottom, just like we're used to in English. However, there are a few rules in how a character block is arranged that are worth stating explicitly. The first position is always a consonant. If your syllable does not start with a consonant, then we learned that very useful nothing consonant, which makes no sound at the beginning of a character. The second position is always a vowel, and it is sometimes located to the right of the first consonant and sometimes located below the first consonant. It depends on the shape of the vowel. The vertical shaped ones go beside the first consonant, and these horizontal ones go below the first consonant. Some characters only contain letters in these two positions, and the third one is left empty. But the third position in the character block is located on the bottom, and it can only contain consonants. The third position is also known as the Batchim position. And when certain letters are located in the Batchim position, they are, in fact, pronounced completely differently than the way that we learned in the last lesson. We've already seen a little preview of this concept when we learned the nothing consonant. It makes no sound at the beginning of a character and an NG at the end of a character. That was the first Batchim pronunciation rule we learned. Now let's learn the other ones too. Remember this letter? It's a hat on a head, which sounds like the letter H. However, if you ever see this letter on the bottom of a character, don't pronounce it like an H. When it's on the bottom, it is silent. It makes no sound at all. Now this character we learned sounds like a B, but when written in the Batchim position, it sounds like a P. This character sounds like a G, but when located in the Batchim position, it sounds like a K. Remember doubles? They usually make the same sound as singles, just with more emphasis. But in the Batchim position, double G sounds like K. Also, that RL blend tends to sound a little bit more like an L in the Batchim position. Now these letters, the D, the CH, the J, the S, and the double S all sound like the letter T when located in the Batchim position. And yes, this means that if you have a name that ends in T, it could be spelled 6 different ways. For example, the name Matt can be written with the D on the bottom, the CH, the J, the S, the double S, or of course the T. If you have a name like this, then you get to choose whichever way you like to spell it. Another thing to note is that Koreans don't put much emphasis on the last consonant. When we say the name Matt, for example, we make a big T at the end of it. You make the noise when you exhale, Matt. But when Koreans say the name Matt, they would just say Matt and then breathe silently. It's a habit that's a little difficult to get into, I find. But one thing I've started doing is holding my breath for a fraction of a second at the end of the word just to give myself time to figure out how to breathe silently without making the T sound. If anyone else has any tips to share, I would love to hear them. Now, an important point to bring up is that these pronunciation rules only apply when the letter is in the Batchim position and also the next syllable in the word does not begin with the nothing consonant. When that happens, the word is pronounced as if the Batchim letter has been moved into the first position of the next syllable. It does not retain the Batchim pronunciation. It goes back to its normal pronunciation. When it is written like this, it is pronounced like this. The first syllable has 2 letters, and the second one starts with a B sound. Also, the same thing happens with G. When it's written like this, It's pronounced like this. Now, what if you have a double consonant in the Batchim and the next syllable begins with a nothing? When you have two identical consonants in the Batchim, you pronounce it as if both of them were moved into the place where the nothing consonant is. In the case of a double S, you have a leading syllable that is pronounced with two letters and a following syllable that begins with double S. And the double S is pronounced the normal way with the highly emphasized S sound. The same thing happens if you were to have double G in the Batchim. The double G is pronounced as if it were in the initial position of the next syllable and obeys normal pronunciation rules, not the Batchim pronunciation. Now let's look at an example of an actual word. This is Korean for the number 11. Shibil. It is meant to be pronounced she-bil, not sheep-eel. Shibil. Sheep-eel? No, definitely no. Ew. Shibil. Did you take my advice and practice Korean by writing your name? You may need to make a change now that you've learned this new pronunciation rule. So, as I was just describing, letters can be pronounced differently when they are at the end of a syllable. And now we will learn that they can also be pronounced differently at the beginning of a word. Note that I said beginning of a word, not syllable, word. Only the very first letter in a word will have these special pronunciation rules. And they're not so much rules as they are just tendencies. Let's start with G. When G is at the beginning of a word, it sounds like K. Now when K is at the beginning of a word, it sounds like KH. What does a KH sound like? Well, we don't have that many KH words in English, but have you ever noticed that there's an H in the word khaki? We're supposed to be saying khaki, not just khaki, khaki. It's a little more subtle than that, but that's how you would say a K when it's at the beginning of a Korean word. Have you ever heard a Korean say the word Korean? They say it with an H. They say Korean. Moving on, when D is at the beginning of a word, it sounds like a T. When J is at the beginning of a word, it sounds like a CH. When B is at the beginning of a word, it sounds like a P. Go back to where you wrote your name. Do you need to rewrite it again? Also, let's take some time to note that there are no Korean equivalents for the letters F, V, and Z, also known as Z, or the combinations TH, and the S usually serves as the SH blend. Koreans do sometimes pronounce their S a little bit like an SH anyways. There's more on that later. If your name contains a TH, you can use a T or an S instead, whichever sounds better to you. In place of a Z, the convention is to use a J. The Korean word for pizza is pizza. In place of a V, you can use a B. And the most common substitution for F is P. Coffee in Korean is kapi. Another problem you might encounter in writing your name is blends, like TR, KR, GR, DR, BR, BL. What Koreans do with these blends is insert a vowel in between the two consonants, usually the brook vowel. So if your name is Brad, for example, you write B-rad. But wait, we just learned the Batchim rules. This doesn't say Brad, it says brat. No one wants to be called a brat. So we have to add another brook vowel to the very end. Brad. Brad. We had to change a one-syllable name into a three-syllable name, but we have managed to write a Western name in Hangul. But wait, we just learned that a B at the beginning of a word sounds like a P. That doesn't say Brad, it says Prad. How do we fix that? Well, we can't. So enjoy your new name, Prad. No, actually, we can do something about that. Remember we learned about double consonants? Only 5 Korean letters can be doubled. But luckily, all the letters which are pronounced differently at the beginning of a word are included in those 5. So you can use a double consonant if you really, really want to preserve the pronunciation of your first initial. But this is just not really done for Korean names. And in fact, the double B is often romanized as double P. Same thing with the other double letters. There are alternative ways of romanizing them. There's more on that in a later lesson. You'd be much better off just embracing the new pronunciation of your name. I did. The next lesson will be all about consonant pairs. We'll learn what to do when we encounter 2 different consonants in the Batchim of the same syllable block. Linked below is a transcription of this lesson and a chart of the Korean letters and their Roman equivalents, including the Batchim pronunciation. Thanks for studying with me!